evening, everyone. Those who are on via Zoom, those who are present. This is a instructional committee meeting of the Board of Trustees of United ISD. Today is Tuesday, July 13th, 2021, and the time is now 6 o'clock. We're present in the USD boardroom at 201 Lindenwood in Laredo, Texas. Present is Frank Castillo, board member, Javier Montemayor. I'm not sure if Ms. Flores Oliveros is present.
Ricardo Molina?
Yes, I'm here.
Ricardo Molina, I'm here also.
Good afternoon, Mr. Molina. Hello, Ms. Oliveros.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear. All right.
Okay.
Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, Texas flag? The Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
Not at this time. Afternoon.
Mr. Bellis is present as well. And number 3 comes to be reviewed by the regular board meeting on July 21st, 2021, with recommendations to be made by the Instructional Committee. Approval of the 2021-2022 Student Code of Conduct, internally recommended changes, and authorize legal counsel to modify as deemed necessary or required. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Castillo, Mr. Montemayor, Mr. Bellis, and members of the audience. We bring before you just a few changes to our 21-22 Student Code of Conduct. The definition for harassment has changed, and online impersonation as well has been added to our Student Code of Conduct as well as to our technology guidelines. The firearm definition, we just received some last minute changes and we have a copy here for you as well. But the firearm definition has removed or has added the word silencer, as a silencer is part of a firearm. And I'm just kind of giving you a real quick overview of what the changes are. That presentation was submitted to you for your review. The prohibited weapon has removed a firearm silencer. And we do punish children or administer a consequence when there is continued sexual abuse of a child or a disabled individual. And those are the only changes that we have to the Student Code of Conduct that are significant. In addition to some children that go to the alternative school, if they're going to be placed for 18 days or less, they have an opportunity to get work from their home campus dual enrollment teacher so that they can continue their studies and hopefully just be able to return and be able to continue with their dual enrollment and be successful in that course. Those are the most significant changes. Do you have any questions of me for the Student Code of Conduct? And that would be the only one that's approved by the school board. The other items we have, the other manuals we have, are for informational items, and those will be presented later on.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Any questions, Mr. Castillo?
No, just a comment. Thank you very much, Ms. Perez, for sharing with me this information beforehand also, so I have a good understanding of it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Perez, I have a question. My only question is if they're going to follow the code of conduct or they're going to do, like most of the time, they whoever, like the dress code, everybody does whatever they want in the schools. That's something that I want to enforce. Of course, if we're going to approve it, I want to enforce just like the other board members, I think. Thank you.
Mr. Molina, if I may, we will be working with our campus principals to ensure that we can follow the best we can. Okay? That's something we'll discuss. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you very much.
And we are currently issuing uniform vouchers to our constituents, so that opportunity has been given to them. Our admissions department has also worked with our vendors, our local vendors, and hopefully we're hoping for a great supply of uniform items that would meet our student code of conduct dress code requirements. So we're hopeful about that.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
that. Number 2, approval of interlocal agreement and memorandum of understanding between the Webb County Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program and United ISD for the 2021-2022 school year.
This is our agreement with JJAP, the educational services which they provide. We pay them to educate our children that we expel for discretionary reasons only. Our mandatory expulsions, we do not pay for. So this MOU addresses the cost, the daily rate. It addresses transportation costs that they incur when we transport children from the north side of UISD. And it addresses a lot of different areas such as testing, counseling that's provided to children. So we have a dual agreement to make sure that our children that are placed at JJP continue to get the services which they need to be successful. But we don't have any significant changes in there. It's just wording, grammatical changes. Any questions at all?
Questions?
No, and thank you very much. I know that you said that there were no changes from the prior occasion, so I'm comfortable with it.
Nothing significant, it's just about an address change, etc. The year changed as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 3, approval of optional flexible school day program for the 2021-2022 school year to continue the positive approach to success at Lyndon B. Johnson High School, to expand past program at United South High School.
Yes, good evening, board members,
Good evening.
those present and those online. We bring before you the application for the optional flexible school day program, which we refer to it as the PASS program, the Positive Approach to Student Success. And we have, you can go to the PowerPoint, I think that would be the best summary of the program itself. The actual, this is all the application components that we submit to TA. It's ready to go upon approval. We do need to have a public hearing because it is an instructional model. So we would have a public hearing prior to the approval at the regular board meeting next week. So we go to the PowerPoint. If you see the blue slides, I don't have the page numbers. But this kind of gives you in a nutshell as to what it is. It is at LBJ High School. It would be our 4th year to be implemented at LBJ High School. But what we would like is to expand the program to United South High School. And what we have noticed, keep on going one more. What we have noticed, especially with the year that we had, is that many of these particular students in lower economic areas, they went to work for their families. And so they provided for the households. And so some of these students may have gotten behind in their credits. And so this is an alternative approach to hopefully get them caught up on their credits and ensure that they meet graduation requirements. So it's a dropout intervention program. And so I just kind of like to go over some data with you. And this is under Education Code, Section 290822. Students are able to participate in an optional flexible school day program. And these are the criteria that those who are allowed to be in this program: a student is at risk of dropping out of school as defined by the Texas Education Code, a student is attending a campus implementing an innovative redesign, a student is attending a community-based dropout recovery program, a student is attending an approved early college high school program, or a student as a result of attendance requirements under the Texas Education Code 25092 will be denied credit for one or more classes in which the student has been enrolled. And that's a criteria that we will utilize for these particular students. They were denied credit either for attendance or they are just behind. And so the requirements from TEA is that we would have to present to you all for approval. We would have to submit our application citing intent to participate, which we have already done. I've already made contact with TEA, and so we're already on the radar. And then the program will be evaluated annually by TEA for approval. And it's hopefully a 30-day approval period. In speaking to TEA, they're behind a little bit, and so I'm hoping that this gets approved by them immediately so that we can start on day 1 on August 16th. And so if not, we cannot start and we cannot place any students until this program is approved by TEA. And so we look at the next slide, please. And what we utilize in this program, the PASS program, is we utilize Odyssey Ware to take courses they have lost credit in or are in jeopardy of losing credit in. If, say, they're not already meeting 90% attendance rule, Odyssey Where is our program that we would utilize. There is a designated teacher provided to offer remediation on concepts and skills, and they work in collaboration with either another teacher, special ed teacher if needed, or a 504 individual as needed as well. And then, of course, all the monitoring, the data requirements. The good thing is that Odyssey Where covers what I'm looking for. It allows the information to be uploaded, and the teacher can immediately know what module they're on and the progress. It tracks the progress of a particular student because they have login credentials. So every campus will have one teacher assigned to this particular area in this classroom. We do require a lab setting. We normally have it outside in the portable areas so that students are not distracted and they move into this facility. And I share with you in the next slide. And this is not complete, but because we ended our school year March 13th last year. If you look at the total number of students enrolled, 39. The credits recovered the fall semester, 33. The spring semester, we were way above 62 credits that were recovered, and the students who met graduation requirements were 20. So I always say that if we help one student complete graduation requirements, we help. It's a plus. In this case, 20 of our students, yes, sir. It's success. So 20 of our students were able to complete this program. We are looking at expansion at United South High School, looking at federal funds to cover that particular teacher instead of just taking them from those allocations and the general allocations. So we're hoping for your approval and so that we can submit to the state so that we can implement the program once a year.
Just 2 items on this Odyssey, if I may, on this program, because we use Odyssey, it helps our teachers also to monitor students, as far as tracking them. And I'd like to share with all of you that we started OBJ, we've had the success, because no one has the data there. So we're expanding United South. Eventually, we want to look at the other houses as well, but we're looking at the campuses with the biggest needs right now. Or we do plan to expand, just for information.
And how do we determine those needs? I guess
We look at the data as far as our kids
graduation.
graduation rate more than anything else.
Graduation rates, meaning they were less than United and Alexander?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So everything is based on data.
And completion rates. Some students take 5 years to graduate.
Is it something to look forward to in the future, or maybe it's just never going to happen where other schools get the same pass program like Alexander?
They may not have a designated program, sir, but we also offer Odyssey
Odyssey, no,
at
campuses.
those particular high schools.
Because that was one of the concerns I had, like, why isn't that district-wide?
Right.
You know, it would seem to be, but maybe there is not a need because of the numbers. And where does the funding come for this teacher, is my other question.
The general,
General fund.
General
Exactly.
fund for the one for LBJ, yes.
It's just our funding. There's no additional revenue
And the one
anywhere
that
else.
we are seeking for United South High School, we are seeking federal funds for
Yes.
that.
Okay, and I guess the other thing is, how do we define at risk?
there's certain criteria, sir. We look at if they're still classified as freshmen. I mean, this is how we allow them to be in this particular class. If they're classified as freshmen because they've only completed three credits. And so I already know that that student, even there may be a second year freshman, that student has to catch up. If not, he's going to be a 5 year or 6 year, he's going to take 5 or 6 years to graduate. And so we look at those. There's a definition for at risk, and there's certain criteria that is met.
Yes.
But however, when we select these particular students, we look at individual students who work and who may, be at McDonald's till 2 o'clock in the morning. And so they may not be able to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning to come to class. And so their attendance is affected or impacted. And so they can come to school at 12:30 and go from 12:30 to 4:30. So it gives you a little flexibility in their schedule with regards to how we can go ahead and so that they don't get further behind in their credits and in their education.
I would assume your attendance clerks and your
Yes.
counselors are key.
Our attendance
Tracking.
officers are actually tracking, sir. And the moment that they start seeing a student is missing 90%, if they have 5-6 days of absence, we hit that student, we talk to that student, and we try to encourage the parents, and then, why are you arriving late? Why aren't you coming into class? And let's get you into this program that may be to your benefit.
There's a pattern of
I guess I was directing myself more toward, is there a mental health issue in the family that would classify them more as an at-risk student, or do you consider?
No, actually,
that-
our state actually has a definition that defines what adverse students. For example, I give an example, a student goes to alternative school. Once they're, for that school year, they're now identified as at risk. But we'll get you the definition for, because
Well,
there's several.
It's just trying to, I guess, put myself in
Right.
a layman's terms here,
Sure.
to make sure I understand the program, our program. And I mean, I would just think that there's got to be more help, as I've always believed in, helping families transition and get them the best education we can give. And thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you.
I have a question. Along those lines, so if a student doesn't belong to the boundaries of those two schools, they're still able to attend these courses, correct?
Well, Adriana Ramirez, we, and Armando Salazar have in the past worked together very collaboratively, and Armando has allowed some students to take part in that program prior to LBJ. That's the only campus that has ever really asked. But I will go back and stress that United, actually all of our high schools have a type of an Odyssey program, but the students still continue in their regular coursework. It's not an optional flexible schedule. They still continue on track with their regular bell schedule, whether it be first block, second block, third block, where they go to Odyssey and take a particular class to catch up. Say, for example, they are failing U.S. history. And so instead of going to the U.S. history teacher, they go to the Odyssey Ware teacher and they take that class online so they can hopefully catch up. But they continue with their other coursework that they may be having success in. So this program is a little different because they only have to go to school for 4 hours so that we can get full ADA funding.
Yes, correct. So similar to that is Jose Valdez at LISD, and they are allowed to actually even log on to Odyssey from home, so they can fast track and actually graduate early even. I've worked with some of those students, not through my work, but through my independent work, and some of them have gone from actually being at the status of a freshman and graduating that year. So talk about saving lives and improving lives, that's the way to go. And I agree with Mr. Garcia. I think this, and I've said it I think I even said it last year, we need this program at all the high schools. And if we don't have it, it's not the student's fault that we don't have it. There should be an absolute blanket exception for any student that needs this, that doesn't attend those two schools, to be authorized to attend those campuses so that they can partake in this program, because it's of high value to these students. We're always focusing on the students that are A students and our stellar students, and these are the ones that fall through the cracks. I mean, even your numbers showed it. Your numbers are so low, and I'm sure there's more who need it that we've lost. And my goal is not to lose any student. So I don't think it should be up to any principal as to whether or not the students are allowed to transfer. I think it should be a blanket approval. That's just my opinion.
I will share with you that, again, as Ramon mentioned, all high schools have the capability, and we do offer Odyssey for our students, and we're identified as we do credit checks with our counselors, so we address them individually. And these two particular campuses, deep in the deep south, the numbers were a lot higher, and because of situations at home and so forth, we kind of adapted our schedules with them, going with this program. But again, Mr. Oliveros and board members, we're looking at expanding. But right now, we're looking at the campus with the biggest needs. Are we offering Odyssey to all campuses, all students? Yes, that's availability for all our students as well.
Not only that, if I may, also summer school, also the summer school program, we look at credit recovery for our students to make sure that they are graduating with their cohort. That's very important for us.
Can you all that?
Yes, I agree. Y'all are doing an awesome job, but I think the difference is that they get full day credit for 4 hours on Odyssey versus offering an Odyssey course. They still have to attend other classes in person, and that may be difficult for some students. We're getting there, I understand that, but I think I've been pushing this actually since I've been a board member, because I see the value in it. And like I said, we're always focused on the top 10 students and the students that are accelerated, and I want to focus more on these students because they need our attention more. Not that I don't want to focus on the other ones, but they're going to succeed with or without us because they're good performing students. These are the ones that have all the barriers and they're disadvantaged. And so I agree with Mr. Castillo on this one 100%. That's all I'm going to say, because I won't take it further.
Can we at least do an assessment on Alexander United, those campuses that identify those at-risk students and see what the numbers are there? At least we'll have that information.
We'll have our accountability and
Yes.
department review it.
We'll have that information so we can address,
Okay.
see how we can address those.
Send that to you also.
But we do agree that we need
Yes,
to push
that's-
this program first.
I don't think that's an issue on the approval of this. I think it's, how are we going to address those in Alexander United?
I agree.
Number 4, approval of first and final reading of board policy DEC, local compensation and benefits, leaves and absences.
I think you said I provided a copy for you. And if you look, if I show you mine, it's all redlined and it's a lot of strikeouts. So we kind of butchered this policy. This is part of policy update 117, in which TASB has made some recommended changes to this policy. And basically it's because the events of the past year have highlighted the need for additional flexibility regarding administration of leave. And so we have collaborated, met with our legal team, human resources, on at least 3 occasions to review DEC local policy. And so one of the recommendations that you'll see here is that they are asking us to remove all the administrative details, not to be placed in administrative, in the board policy, but that may be placed in the administrative regulations and at the same time also in the employee handbook. And so really when you look at the final version, what you all have is a simplified version of this particular policy. And it allows, because we put it in regulations, it doesn't have to go to board approval, it allows the superintendent a little more flexibility to make revisions to this particular policy. And so you'll see some of the minor changes. A lot of them have been just struck out, and I can share with you the actual working document so that you can see what actually changed. Where we talked about order, use of leave, do we take state leave first, do we take local leave first? All of those items were being struck out and put in an administrative regulation. And so those are the items that we are working with human resources to place in our employee handbook and to share with our employees prior to the start of the school year. And so I will share that with you. I know Ms. Garcia had additional comments with regards to DEC local. At the very top, that sentence up at the top, the superintendent shall develop administrative regulations addressing employees' leaves and absences to implement the provisions of this policy. That basically summarizes why the changes were made and given that the superintendent a little bit more flexibility with regards to that. So we move everything that's not required to be here into admin regs. And we have those ready for you to present, hopefully to you at the board meeting. And so I think they want this to be an individual item, Sonia, correct?
Yes.
Yes, we're going to recommend that it be an individual item, just to make sure everything's, that, like Lori was saying, our office and HR on the same page, and everything that needs to be put in the employee handbook is placed in the employee handbook. Because as Lori said, that's really the major change, is to move things that were in this DEC local to the employee handbook, and we want to make sure everything is moved correctly and everybody's on the same page. So we're presenting it at the regular board meeting, but it will be an individual item. That's my recommendation.
All right, any questions?
Is this based on legislation, new legislation?
No, sir,
Or
more
is it
than any-
something coming from our district?
It's actually coming from TASB, sir, our
Yes.
policy consultants. And it has to do more so with the, I guess, the events of the year that have occurred in reference to providing leave opportunities for our employees. And so instead of, it just gives the superintendent that flexibility to be able to do a little bit more without having to bring something to the board, because we had to take action immediately based on leaves. I know that we had EPSL, we had so many other things that were going on with, quarantine and so forth. So we had to move a little fast, and now we're going back to regular board meetings once a month. And so should something happen like this again, then it gives him that flexibility.
I mean, normally that change is good, I just didn't know, still don't, perhaps I shouldn't say it this way. I'm just trying to get an understanding why change is occurring.
Basically, that's why it allows they want the superintendent to have that flexibility.
Okay.
Instead of tying his hands and having to go to the board, post an agenda, get it approved by you, and then it just kind of slows down the process.
Okay, very well, thank you.
Number 5, consideration of approval, for approval of second and final reading of local policies and TASB update 170.
These are there's only 2 policies. I think there was a handout also given to you. We inadvertently put the legal policies in the manual instead of the local policies. So it is only CH local, which has to do with purchasing and acquisition. Like DEC, this is part of update 117. So it's CH and CV local, we're update 117. DEC local, we took it apart, we left it separate because we made some minor revisions to this policy as recommended by TASB. So the change here on CH local is the exception for emergency contracts, and it has to do due to the winter storms, and you don't have this on the slides, but due to the winter storms, where we had to have emergency repairs, this now delegates the authority to the superintendent to approve those emergency contracts immediately. And so instead of, again, holding off, but it also requires the superintendent shall report to the board at the next regular meeting any contract made under this authority under the emergency contract provision area. So that is something that should we have another, hopefully not, another winter storm or another pandemic issue or so forth, that we have to make emergency purchases, it gives him that authority, but with the reporting to you. And that's basically it for CH local. In reference to CV, CV local, when you look at that policy, it also, it actually just takes out the emergency damage or destruction, and they removed that provision because they moved it to CH local. All right, so that's basically the change there that you see in the 2 handouts that I provided to you all at your seats. And I apologize to the other board members that we don't have that on a slide for you all. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
B, items to be reviewed by the Instructional Committee for information only. Number 1, proposed changes to the 2021-2022 Student Handbook, Bus Rider Handbook, and Technology User Guide.
Hello once again, Annette Bettis, Director for Discipline Management for the record. The following handbooks are included along with the Student Code of Conduct, but this portion is just for information. We have the Bus Rider Handbook, which delineates the bus riders' expectations, how they should behave when they are being transported to and from different activities. We also have the Technology Use Guidelines, and we incorporated harassment and online impersonation in that area. These particular handbooks, manuals, individual department directors and coordinators submitted their requested changes. In the student handbook, just some information for you that we are now doing internally. We have an online volunteer application process. We have an online in-district and out-of-district student transfers. Individuals who live outside of our district may request to attend our school district campuses. Enrollment, children can now go to school up to the age of 19. Our parent portal opens every year on April the 1st so that parents can begin to re-enroll their children. When a child is being homeschooled, we may request a parent to submit documentation that they're homeschooling their child. A parent doesn't have to report to a campus when they're trying to withdraw their child. They can do that via an email or telephone. There were some changes regarding language arts and reading. It is now being referred to as ELAR. We will have telemedicine next year at all of our campuses. We also are going to be required to report controlled substance overdoses to the state or to the local health authority. English learners, any decisions will be directed and made by LPAC committee members. DENPAS is the state assessment to assess a child's progress in listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. There's also a DENPAS alternate assessment, and star writing has been done away with in grades 4 and 7. So those are just a highlight of the most significant changes that we will see in our handbooks. Do you have any questions at this time? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2021 STAR and EOC results, House Bill 4545 information, and the 21-22 STAR assessment preliminary calendar.
Good evening, board members, Emma Nelson for the record. We're going to look at some STAR results that we're not used to seeing. We're going to see some information here based on the year that we had. So I just wanted to make sure that we looked at a couple of things. So we can go to the slide, please. The next slide. There were, of course, instructional implications. We had 92% of our students on average for the year via synchronous and asynchronous methods of learning. Students that we had participating in face-to-face were also receiving synchronous instruction through their mobile learning devices. The majority of all 3rd through 8th grade students took STAR assessments online. We only actually had 5 students take a paper assessment, and this was the first time that we did all of online assessment. And of course, which is EOC, that was based on student choice because we know that's directly tied to graduation criteria for students. We had over 85% of our students take the STAR assessment this year, and over 90% of UISD students took STAR EOC. Now, we usually bring comparisons to you. We compare to the region and we compare to the state. But it's very important for us to understand that the state results are not differentiated by campus. They're just all the state results together. And at the state level, when I looked at on campus face-to-face instruction, there was an average of about 32% of the students on campuses. Okay, so as we look at our results, let's look at elementary first. We had UISD 61% meet the approaches level. Approaches means that they met the passing standard. 32% scored at the meets grade level, and 16% scored at the master's grade level. Okay. Now we do have the region, and you'll notice that we are above the region. We are not, for the first time in many years, above the state. But again, we cannot compare apples to oranges. The state as a whole had more students on campus receiving traditional instruction versus we had 92% on virtual instruction. When we look at the math, the state was preparing us since October that math was going to be one of the areas that we were going to see the greatest need appear, and you see it here in our data. 51% of our students at approaches, 22% at meets, and 10% at masters. We are above the region. We are slightly below the state. Looking at writing, this is the last time that we will present writing as a particular subject. It will be now infused into the reading, so they're saying it's reading language arts from now on. We were at 50% approaches, 24% at meets, and 7% at masters. Again, above the region and slightly below the state. When we look at our science for elementary, this is only reflective of 5th grade. 49% at approaches, 18% at meets, 6% at masters. Again, slightly above the region. We do see the differences there between the district and the state. Let's go into middle school, and in middle school we had 5 subject areas. Reading, we were at 65% approaches, 36% at meets grade level, and 16% at master's grade level. Again, above the region, very slightly below the state in middle school. Math, 53% approaches, 21% meets, 6% masters. Again, above the region and then below the state. Writing, this will be the last time we see it at middle school as well. 58% at approaches, 27% at meets, 6% at masters. Again, above the region and then slightly trailing the state. When we look at science, we were at 68% approaches, 39% meets, and 18% masters. When you compare us to the state, this was one area that we were 1 percentage point above the state at approaches, slightly below at meets and masters. And then our social studies scores, 50% at approaches, 18% at meets, and 8% at masters. And again, above the region, slightly behind the state. When we look at high school, this is end of course. We were at 82% at approaches, 48% meets, 14% at masters. Right above the region, right around the same percentage as the state. US history, 86% approaches, 59% meets, 26% masters, again above the region, slightly behind the state. English 1 and 2, we grouped it together, 73% approaches, 57% meets, 11% masters. As we've been following our data, English 1 and 2 have been the subjects that we have been not struggling, but they're the ones that, you know, are challenges there for our students, especially because of our EL population. And you'll notice that we are above the state here, so that is a really good place to be for our English 1 and English 2. When we look at algebra, 74% at approaches, 41% meets, and 22% at masters. So I will tell you that we had several principals calling concerned, because we know that our teachers worked extra hard this year, and these are not the results that we're used to seeing. You know, we're used to seeing results at a much higher rate, but it was given the circumstances. What I will tell you is when we looked at our scale scores, and our scale scores measure the average score that our students get on the assessments, we were in a good place. So that tells us that our curriculum is good. The only thing we could not control was the how the students were receiving the instruction, because we didn't have control over the instructional setting. Okay. Again, that was based on the circumstance.
Just to note, if I may, there's a correlation statewide that school districts that had students face-to-face normally did, fared better than those that did not. I mean, that's just across the state.
Yeah.
Just for information.
And we do also know that through the legislative session, the state, because they saw all of these results at the state level, they did put into a House Bill 4545 requirements that we must meet. For example, if a student failed a subject area, we need to provide 30 hours, and we need to document those 30 hours per subject area. They're also stating that we need to deliver this instruction in a ratio of 3:1, which is probably the biggest challenge that every school district in the state will have. The only way that we can increase the ratio is if we get parental approval, so we are working on a parent letter. It requires an accelerated instructional plan, and it requires a committee for all 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade students last year, a committee that's going to be monitoring how they're doing this year. The great thing about this bill is that it removes the high stakes testing as far as the student being automatically retained. However, we are still going to have to do a lot of the, complete a lot of the monitoring processes that we have.
What is the 3-to-1 ratio?
3 students to 1 teacher for that.
Teacher.
Yeah, no, we were looking at numbers, and just as we were talking with Ms. Rodriguez Elementary, she would need 903 teachers to just be able to continue, provide that 3-to-1 ratio. It is not something that is going to be very easy for us.
Only for the students
who failed.
Yeah. Yes. So
Now, the students that did not come into test, they're actually also part of that group. However, we have just received information that we're going to be able to give a beginning of year assessment, and based on those results, if they do well at the approaches level, they will not be part of that group that needs that accelerated instruction.
we don't have 27,000 students that fail.
No.
You need 900 teachers.
900, it was 2,700 students, and then remember, it's every content area. So we need to have the 3-to-1 ratio for every content area. It's a daunting task.
Well, that's the amount of students, 2,700 more or less?
More or less for one of the subjects that we were looking at. And we're talking about across the grade levels. I'm sorry?
Does it matter how much time that ratio has to be met?
For the 30 hours that we have to provide.
But
However,
30 hours span of a semester, or over what span?
the 30 hours over the span of the year, but in reality, because we're providing that accelerated instruction, we also have to balance the tutorials and everything that we have for this year, because at the end of this year, when we do the testing, when we provide the assessments for the students, we will go back to accountability and rating. Okay, so
So is it,
Back normal.
I'm sorry, is this separate and apart from tutorials?
These are tutorials based on how they did on the state assessment last year, but we're also still going to continue with our tutorials as we are monitoring the instruction for this year. That has been very successful for us, and we cannot let, we can't let go of one thing to take care of another.
So those.
Okay, but can you, I'm sorry, so is it, what's the ratio for your regular tutorials?
There is no necessary ratio. We kind of keep it 10 to 1, no more than 15. And we're able to designate those tutorials based on how the students are doing within that instructional
Area of need.
6 weeks or that instructional period. This particular one with House Bill 4545 is based on last year's result.
So I'm just trying to figure out why they would do a 3-to-1 ratio. Do not other school districts have the same numbers that we have?
Oh, yes, yes. And let me say this.
Impossible.
Yes, let me say this though. They are standing up some tutorial processes at the state level where we're going to be able to do one-to-one with the student working on a particular program for a particular skill. The only thing is that we do have to have a teacher, a certified teacher, as a facilitator. So we're learning everything about this bill. In fact, we have 3 workshops, 2 tomorrow, 1 for elementary, 1 for high school tomorrow, and then for middle school, to make sure that we're meeting the letter of the law, to make sure that we're incorporating our scope and sequence, because we've already revamped our scope and sequence to make sure that we are filling in the gaps for the virtual learning. And so we will have a plan. We're also working on a letter so that parents allow us to monitor the students, provide more than just a 3-to-1, and if we need additional support, then we'll come back and make those tutorials in smaller numbers.
So are these covered by SR funds as well? Even though
Yes.
this type of kind of laws, I guess.
Some of them are covered through the ESSER funds for the tutorials, but the state is also providing in-kind grants that we are going to apply for, where the cost of some of the tutorial sessions will not be on the district's bill.
Right.
So we're looking at every single option that's out there. The only thing I do have to say is that as the state is rolling out 4545, we have sessions with state coordinators, and so we've got to make sure that we understand everything that they are requiring for us. So we will make some adjustments to our plans that we're going to have, and that we're going to roll out with our principals.
I just have one question. When you mentioned the 30 hours, is it for the whole calendar year or?
It is
Within the school year, yes.
It is within the school year. Yes, it is within the school year, but we really want to make sure that we close those gaps within the first semester so that we can concentrate on the,
Get it reduced, I guess.
Get them to par, and then we're going to address it.
Right, because we will also have, those normal gaps that we have that we close at the end of the year. Okay.
Were there a lot of students that did not take the STAR?
Yes, we do
Like
have.
2,700
Yeah,
number?
we had about 80, it depends on, I think at the elementary level, we had about 82% testing. So we've got the difference that did not come into test.
So that assessment at the beginning of the year is going to be crucial to
That
minimize that
assessment
amount.
is going to be very important for us, and we are going to give it to every single student that is enrolled with us, so that we can also update their accelerated plans, and our teachers have current information to be able to plan those tutorials and those interventions that we're going to provide.
So the idea will be that 2,700 number will be reduced.
That's what we're
as much as
working on.
possible.
Yes, that's what we're working on. Mhm. Yes.
All right.
We will tell you though that we are going to continue with the online testing. We were very successful with implementing it last year, and the state is moving in that direction, so we want to make sure that we keep our students prepared for that. So the last slide that you have is a sample calendar. It has changed again, only because now they removed the second and third administration for 5th and 8th grade students. But working with technology, with Mr. Hector Perez, Mr. Rene Cruz, we really had a good assessment schedule this past year, and we're following that same one. Our executive directors for every campus type are working with us to make sure that we are not overburdening the students to test online and making sure that we've got the bandwidth, that we've got the equipment, everything that we need so that our students will be successful. We will bring you better data next, at the end of this year.
You gotta overlay it with the test class and at the end of course,
Yes.
We all make it. All right, any questions for Ms. Hudson? All right.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you so much.
The instruction committee meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.